This week's case is about an Iowa news anchor woman who disappeared 27 years ago. So, let's get started. Hello everyone, my name is Brandy and it is time for another true crime case or mystery, along with one or more of my fabulous felines. If you are a returning subscriber, welcome back, my feline friends, and a big shout out to my feline fans who help support this channel. This case was a suggestion by Nini Marie, so thank you, Nini, for the suggestion. This case did happen in Iowa, where I'm from, and it happened when I was in high school, so everyone was talking about it, and I remember it vividly and hoping so much that they would find her, but alas, she's still missing. Jodi Huisentruit was born June 5th, 1968 in Long Prairie, Minnesota. She was the youngest daughter of Maurice and Jane. Now, Jodi excelled in golf in high school, and her team went on to win the Class A division in 1985 and in 1986. After high school, Jodi attended St. Cloud University, where she majored in communications and speech, and she got her bachelor's degree in 1990. Now, Jodi didn't start off in the news business right away. Her first job out of college was actually with Northwest Airlines. But after that, she got a job at KGAN, a CBS affiliate in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And she was the station's bureau chief for a while. After that, she got a job back in Minnesota, returned to Minnesota, and she worked for KSAX, which was an ABC affiliate. Finally, she came back to Iowa and she started working for KIMT, which was a CBS affiliate in Mason City, Iowa. Now, Jodi herself, she was very friendly. She was upbeat, friendly, outgoing, a very lovely person, as explained by her friends and family. She loved her job, but she also loved being in the community. Now, at the beginning of June in 1995, it was Jodi's 27th birthday, and one of her friends named John Van Sice actually threw her a birthday party. Now, even though John was 20 years older than Jodi, the two seemed very close. I mean, John even named his boat after her. However, the two did not seem romantically linked together. They were just friends. Now, a couple weeks after her birthday party on June 26th, 1995, Jodi actually participated in a golf tournament in Mason City. After the golf tournament, she headed over to John, her friend who threw her the birthday party, headed over to his house because he had a video of her birthday party and they were going to watch it together. Now, after she watched the video, she headed home sometime after that. Now, being a news anchor, as you may know, Jodi had to be to work very early. Like, we were talking 3 a.m. early. That's way too early for me. I'd never wake up that soon. Now, Jodi wasn't at the station when she was supposed to be, and her producer noticed, so her producer just kind of called her up real quick. Now, Jodi did answer the phone, and she kind of seemed like she got woke up in a sleep, and they were like, "Hey, Jodi, you coming into work today?" And she's like, "Oh my God, I overslept. I'm so sorry. I'm on my way, headed out the door right now." Now, by 6 a.m., Jodi had still not showed up to the station, but they had to go on air. So the producer filled in for Jodi on air and did her segment. By 7 a.m., though, they couldn't reach Jodi. They kept calling her. They couldn't reach her. Nobody could contact her. So they decided enough was enough. We're calling the Mason City police. So the police were called and they went to Jodi's apartment. Her car was still in the parking lot, so they thought maybe she had fallen back asleep. But unfortunately, the scene around her car wasn't very good. They found evidence that she had a struggle as she was getting in her car. Some of her personal items were kind of strewn around the area. You see, she would take like a bag of makeup and hair stuff and, all this stuff because she'd usually get ready at the station. And the bag was kind of thrown down and all these things had fallen out of her bag. She even had her shoes in the area. And when they found her car key was like bent. So police started speaking to Jodi's neighbors in the apartment complex. And what they stated is that the neighbors said in the early morning hours, they did hear somebody scream. Another neighbor stated that he actually saw a white van in the parking lot close to where Jodi parked her car. It had its lights on and it was running. Unfortunately, after a thorough search, they never were able to find any van or anything like that. So further investigation into Jodi's apartment didn't show much. They found a journal, but they also found that like the toilet seat was up. Now Jodi lived alone, so they thought maybe she might have had some male company over, but no evidence was found of any visitors, and there was no eyewitnesses to her actual abduction. Unfortunately, the police did not have a lot to work with. Because of the scene by her car, though, and there was like a palm print on her car, which happened to be her own palm print, they did believe that Jodi was probably abducted while she was trying to get in her car. See, unfortunately, it's a bit normal that, female news anchors will get unwanted attention, and it's usually from the males because when you are watching somebody on television every morning, they're in your home, you get this kind of comfort connective type thing. And I mean, we've seen it with other people too, with stalkers, with celebrities, where because you've seen this person in all these movies or you watch this person over several seasons of a show, you start thinking that you know them and you can just go up to them and start talking to them, So they thought maybe this was the case with Jodi. As of the time when she was abducted, she didn't seem to have any of these issues. However, a year before, she did file a police report stating that a man in a white truck was following her around, but nothing ever really came out of the police report, and it seemed to just stop. However, a martial arts instructor had come forward after he found out Jodi disappeared, and he stated that Jodi had actually been taking self-defense classes at his studio for a couple months. And he stated that she had told him that she just had an incident happen to her, and she didn't go into details, but that she just wasn't comfortable with this incident, so she decided to, learn how to protect herself. But again, nothing came from that information either. Now, the morning of Jodi's disappearance, everybody was kind of looking for her and people were milling about the station. Well, a call came into the news station about 7:20 a.m. and the producer answered the phone and the guy on the other line was like, "Where's Jodi?" Now, the guy on the other line happened to be Jodi's friend, John Van Cise. He noticed that she wasn't on the air, and so he was concerned and said, "Where's she at?" They did tell him that she seemed to be missing. Nobody could find her. So John showed up to Jodi's apartment where there's police milling around, and he talked to the police. Now, he did state that he last saw her the night before. She came over and watched a video of her birthday party. She seemed to be in good spirits, and then she went home. So he was the last one to see her alive. Now, John stated he was given a polygraph test by the police, and he did state that he passed that. And John did cooperate with police fully. Where Jodi lived, there were two men that lived close by. One was a sex offender, and the other one was a convicted rapist. Both men were questioned thoroughly. They did deny involvement with her disappearance, and they were both later ruled out as suspects. Police and volunteers would search the area for weeks trying to find any evidence or anything about what happened to Jodi, but unfortunately, nothing was found. A $10,000 reward was offered for any information leading to an arrest, and by the end, the award was up to around $30,000, but still, no leads that came in resulted in anything. The Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation got involved, and the FBI got involved with the case as well. By September of 1995, Jodi's family even hired private investigators to help with the investigation. Anything they could do to figure out what happened. Now, the family did call America's Most Wanted and Unsolved Mysteries, and both television shows did air a piece on Jodi. By November of 1995, Jodi's family got really desperate, and they actually flew out to California to be on a show called Psychic Detectives. I'm sorry, I don't believe in these shows, but the psychics said that someone became obsessed with Jodi because they saw her on TV, and they ended up abducting her. Thanks, psychic. She couldn't give anything more concrete. Although each show generated some leads, there was nothing ever, solid that identified a suspect or why she went missing or where she went. So unfortunately, several years go by, and the case is still active. They never closed it or anything. Thousands of interviews were done. Suspicious sites around Mason City were examined that maybe somebody buried her body somewhere. But again, nothing. Now, there were other remains that were found during this investigation, which was good, but, still nothing concrete on Jodi. But other cases got solved, which, at least something came out of it, right? Now, in 1999, a young woman named Jackie Folkerts unfortunately was stabbed and attacked to death in her home in Britt, Iowa. Now, Britt, Iowa is about 30 miles away from Mason City. Now, what was interesting about this case is while investigators were investigating her death, Jackie's family and friends came forward and said that Jackie told them that she had talked to a man that said he had something to do with Jodi's disappearance. About 3 weeks before Jackie's murder, a man came into Jackie's workplace, which was a restaurant, and they struck up a conversation, and he said pretty much that he had things to do with Jodi's disappearance. Now, the man apparently came in again to the restaurant after that, and Jackie was able to kind of get his ID, and she wrote down the information, and she did turn it over to police. And then 3 weeks later, she was stabbed. The cases don't seem to be related. Now, there was an arrest a year later after Jackie's murder, and it happened to be a man who actually sexually assaulted her and then killed her. So they don't think the cases were related. But at least some information came out of that. Unfortunately, the information that they gave the police about the man, nothing came out of it. So they either ruled him out or I don't know what happened. By May of 2001, 6 years after Jodi's disappearance, her family had her legally declared deceased. A tree was put up in front of the station in Jodi's honor. In 2003, Minnesota journalists Josh Benson and Gary Peterson created a website called findjodi.com to keep the case in the spotlight and not let it just fade into obscurity. In June 2008, photocopies of Jodi's personal journal were actually mailed to a local newspaper in Mason City. There was no return address. It was mailed anonymously, but the postmark was from Waterloo, Iowa. Waterloo was about 2 hours from Mason City. So this made the police kind of sit up and pay attention because they've had the journal in their possession since Jodi's disappearance. So how did this happen? Now, after a few days of police work, they were able to track down who the sender was, and apparently the sender was a former wife of a Mason City police chief. Apparently he had made copies of the journal, took them home, and she still had copies for some reason. Now, why she sent them to the local newspaper, the police never said, and they don't believe a motive was ever determined, but it was just weird. Now, in 2007, sorry, I kind of went out of order, but in 2007, there was a man named Donald Milks. Now, Donald apparently was unburdening his sins to his local pastor, kind of doing a confession type thing. And he stated due to his kind of drug dealing connections and criminal past that he knew not only who killed Jodi, but he knew where she was buried. And for some reason, he was urging the pastor to get a whole bunch of people from the church together to go to Jodi's grave. Now, although the pastor kind of recognized Donald was kind of in this kind of drug-fueled frenzy, he did take things seriously, and he urged Donald to go to the police with the information. Now, Donald, because of his criminal and drug history, he had a very big mistrust of the police, and so he didn't want to go to them. However, the pastor worked with a friend who then worked with a friend in the police department, and they did urge them to go speak to Donald about stuff, or at least pass on the information that they knew. Unfortunately, the police sort of dismissed Donald as uncredible and unreliable, and really did not pay much attention to him. Now, unfortunately, Donald would end up passing away before any real information was given to anybody, the pastor, the friend, anybody. So if he really did know something, he took it to his grave. In December of 2016, there was a state representative named John Cookier. Now, he ended up writing an opinion article in a local newspaper as he was retiring. And he actually implied that there might be a cover-up from the Mason City Police around this case. So John explained in his article that he had actually drafted a letter, and he was asking for signatures from like Mason City officials to recognize Jodi's 20th year anniversary of her disappearance, to keep the, case in the spotlight. And when he started going around asking people for these signatures, he was getting some strange reactions to it. John stated that the current police chief at the time stated that he wasn't going to sign it, and he didn't want anybody from his department to sign that letter. When John spoke to the mayor of Mason City at the time, the mayor explained that the police chief was actually up for retirement, and he did not need this on his plate or coming up in the public again to put pressure on him right before his retirement. The mayor went on to then kind of beg John to just forget about the letter, withdraw it, and do not give it to the media. He then stated that he was accused of actually meddling in city affairs and not respecting local control. Now, after all this happened, John kind of started asking around, and he actually found out some interesting information as well, that any leads that came into the Mason City Police were always passed along to the Division of Criminal Investigation of Iowa. However, since 2008, any leads that had come in were actually suppressed and concealed, and they were not shared with DCI until 2015, which was odd. John went on to imply in the article that the reaction and attitudes that he got just due to this letter recognizing the anniversary of her disappearance would only make sense if Mason City was actually trying to cover something up or was mishandling the case in some manner. So John waited for the current police chief to retire, and he did. And then when the new police chief was hired, so John then submitted the letter to the new police chief. But the new police chief just completely ignored him, and John never heard back about any of it. So to sum up the article, the state representative, John, stated, "Generally, I would not describe myself as a person who is untrusting. But I have this gut feeling that something is being covered up in Mason City." So, interesting. Now, in 2017, a search warrant was issued in the case on John Van Cise, Jodi's friend who threw her the birthday party. They were seeking GPS information on 2 of his vehicles, but the search warrant has since been sealed and continues to be sealed every year thereafter. Sealing a search warrant means that the public cannot get information on pretty much the outcome of the search warrant. So if there was evidence recovered that, pointed to a crime or incriminated the person in some way, the public is not privy to that as long as it's sealed. Now, John was also subpoenaed to give his fingerprints and palm prints and DNA, and which he did. And again, he's fully cooperated, as far as we know, with everything he's been asked to do. Now, in April 2019, because there was just a lot of rumors floating around, John Van Cise did issue 2 statements to the media through an intermediary, and he stated, "I had absolutely no involvement in the disappearance of my friend Jodi, and that the two of us had no romantic relationship, that she was more like a daughter to me." In 2020, the website findjodi.com, which was still going and active today, started a podcast in order to gain it like a new audience and hopefully open up maybe some new leads in the case. In 2022, the show 2020 debuted a special entitled Gone by Dawn that went over Jodi's disappearance and had interviews with her family and people close to the case. Now, this case is still considered active and still being investigated. It is not considered a closed or cold case right now. The investigators have stated recently that they are working on some theories and they are pursuing, and hopefully these will lead to the truth, or at least provide some answers to Jodi's family. Please be sure to check out findjodi.com. Jodi is spelled with an I, not a Y, and to keep up on the case and to listen to their podcast. And if you or anyone you may know has any information on this case or may have had dealings with Jodi or anybody, please contact the Mason City Police Department so we can hopefully give Jodi's family closure. Jodi was 27 years old when she disappeared on July 27th, 1995, and she's now been missing 27 years. So there is a lot of media attention around this case in Iowa right now. I would love to hear what you think in the comments down below. If you'd like to become a feline friend, simply hit that subscribe button. Give me a like if you like this content. And if you'd like to become a feline fan, please hit that join button for special perks. Thank you, everyone, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!